On today's video, I want to talk about something that I get asked a lot, and that is how to make money as a traveling photographer. Hi friends, Sam here. I'm a professional photographer with 12 years experience in the industry, and I am here to teach you the secrets, the behind the scenes, and everything you want to know about running your own photography business. For those of you who don't know me, I want to give you a little bit of a background check so you understand where I'm coming from. I was born in Argentina, I was raised in Canada, and now I'm living in Bali. How did I get here? We moved to Canada when I was 16 years old with my parents. I spoke no English, I had no idea what I wanted to do in my life, and I was a pretty angry teenager. I mean, I had a really good life in Buenos Aires, and the last thing I wanted to do was move to Winnipeg, Manitoba. But fast forward a couple of years, and I found myself working part-time jobs, saving enough money to travel, and falling in love with going to places around the world, bringing my camera and capturing everything as I went. Since I was very young, my dream was to be a traveling photographer and to be able to get paid to travel the world and take photos. For a long time, I had no idea how to make this happen, and to be honest, the majority of my career was actually working at home and then traveling after. So it wasn't an easy journey, and when I started, there was no Instagram, no influencers, nothing like that really showed me that it could be done, so I kind of had to figure out things on my own. The first thing I want you to understand is that in order to become a traveler and a photographer, at the beginning for me, it was two separate things. I had a lot of work at home, I was making good money, and then I was bumping all my shoots together in the same kind of week or two, so I could actually go away for another 2 or 3 weeks at a time. I had a goal of visiting 50 countries before I turned 30, so I was traveling a lot and I was traveling fast. And even though I was taking beautiful photos, I actually wasn't really able to make money because I was moving through places too quickly. Later on in life, I realized that of course I wasn't gonna make money as a traveling photographer because my priority when traveling wasn't actually finding work, it was just simply traveling. So the first thing that I want to talk about today is exactly that. Do you want to be a traveling photographer, or do you want to be a photographer that can travel? Because if you're like me and you love both, there are ways to work your schedule around and to create income at home where you can develop your niche, you can develop your community, you can be known for what you do, and then take the time off to travel. I know plenty of wedding photographers who work wedding season at home and then take off winter months and live abroad. I know a lot of commercial photographers that do the same, and me included. I was a mix of commercial and event photographer, and I literally created a schedule to fit my lifestyle. So the first thing that I want you to think about is whether you actually want to be working while you travel, or it just seems like a good idea because you want to be able to do more of it. When I turned 30, and this is gonna age me, but that was 5 years ago, I hit my 50 countries. I have traveled so much around the world. I got to a point where I realized I wanted my travels to be different. I wanted to actually start going places, getting to know people, spending time, developing community, and I really wanted to work abroad while I was traveling. So I realized that in order to be a working traveling photographer, I actually had to change the way I travel. I couldn't be backpacking a bunch of places at the same time and like moving around and having no plan. I actually had to set a structure. So what I want to do right now is tell you about a couple of paid jobs that I had as a traveling photographer so you can get an idea what that looks like. Some of my first traveling photography jobs were actually destination weddings. The cool thing about destination weddings is that if you know how to shoot a wedding and you like doing it, it is the same principles, only you get to do it somewhere else. For me, wedding photography wasn't my main gig, and it wasn't really the thing that I wanted to do the most, but of course I was always open to destination weddings because I love traveling. How I found myself into destination weddings was simply through friends and networking. I had a friend's sister who was getting married and she was looking for a photographer, and I just said, well, why don't I do it? They love the idea of having a friend, somebody they knew, somebody they wanted at their wedding actually shoot. So my very first one, I didn't really charge much. They mostly just covered my flights and my accommodation, but I got an all expenses paid 1 week trip to the Bahamas to spend it with friends, to enjoy, to relax, and I got to put that on my portfolio. By having that on my portfolio, the second one that came around was a lot easier to bag. The second one was actually another friend that was getting married. She was getting married in the Dominican Republic. I had never been there. I wanted to do this. And what I actually did this time is I charged her a fee. The fee seemed high to her because she had to pay my fee, but she also had to pay for the accommodation and the flights. So what I actually did here is I got in touch with the hotel and I offered them photos in exchange for a free stay. When they said yes, I had dropped the cost to my bride literally by half. So now that money was going to me and I actually made really good money, got to go to the Dominican for a week and again spend a week on holidays and do a little bit of work on the side. It was amazing. Once I started doing this, I really got a taste for it and I loved it. Another thing that I started doing was when I was booking trips for jobs, what I tried to do was maximize the expense. So if I was already gonna travel somewhere, whether it was on holidays or for a job, what I would try to do is find other jobs that I could do there, or even reach out to clients that I had at home and see if they were interested in having some photos taken overseas. One of my favorite traveling jobs that I done was on a trip to Europe a couple of years ago. I decided I wanted to go in the summer and spend 2 to 3 months traveling, and I just reached out to every single one of my clients and I offered them a package of photos. I said, if you give me your product, I will create photos and videos for you in Paris, in Barcelona, in Greece, and in Turkey, which were the destinations I was already going to. Of course, for a brand and a company to say, wow, I can just send my product and get this done by somebody I already trust, it was an easy yes. The packages run between $400 to $1,000, and I got 4 to 5 clients to say yes, and all of a sudden, my entire trip was paid for and I made money on the go. To me, this was a breakthrough and it made me realize that traveling as a photographer can actually be quite profitable. Another thing that I did when I was traveling was literally tell everybody where I was going and what I was doing. Tapping into your network and telling people that you're willing to take work on and that you're available for hire can turn into incredible opportunities. One of my favorite clients until today is a retreat company that does retreats around the world, and I came across them by pure chance. I was planning a trip and I reached out to friends in my community and I said, if anybody knows of anybody wanting to hire a photographer anywhere in Europe, I'm gonna be there this summer, let me know. And because I planted that seed, that made my friend go, wait, I read something somewhere that they were looking for a photographer. Do you do video? Do you do yoga? Are you interested in this? And my answer, of course, was yes, 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 just to get put in touch with a potential client. And once we talked, the connection was incredible and it turned into an amazing opportunity. I got flown to Italy to photograph and video record this amazing yoga retreat, and it was the most fun job I've ever done. I not only got paid, I got to spend time in one of my favorite countries in the world and got to experience a retreat with everybody. Imagine tasting olive oil in Tuscany, drinking wine, eating cheese, and getting paid for it. That job came to me from what it felt like heaven, but the reality is I did the work to put myself in a place where people knew that they could hire me. So another thing that I really recommend doing is when you decide you're going on a trip, reach out to everyone you know in that destination and ask around and see if you can find work. I find that to get started as a traveling photographer, you have to be willing to travel first and you have to be willing to front the expense, knowing that maybe there won't be a job. This is the most common way to really get started. So you might start getting an idea by now that the best way to get started is to actually fund trips yourself, be already a photographer, be available, bring your camera, and not expect to get work, but be prepared and be looking for it. Of course, in the example of wedding photography, you can pre-plan and you can book a client at home and travel with them. And the last option, like I said, is reaching out to your clients and offering your services to bring their products or to bring the shoot with you wherever you go. But I want to pick back up on something I said at the beginning, and that is how my mindset shifted when I decided I wanted to be working while I was traveling. It was around 2017. I had just traveled to 50 countries, and I realized that now I didn't need to travel so fast just to see as many places as possible. My goal now was to try get work. So I realized that I actually had to go back to the same place over and over again and build connections. I realized that I had to do a little bit of research, and I actually had to set goals and have a strategy and a plan in place. That's why in 2017, when my friend said, I'm going to Tulum, I'm opening a shop there, do you want to come? I said, sure. Why not? Let's try it. And we decided to make the goal of that first trip to meet as many people as possible, to connect and to grow our portfolio. We really wanted to showcase our work, to reflect a Mexico, Tulum energy vibe, to attract more of those clients. So the very first trip to Tulum, we were there for a week. We reached out to every single person that was geotagging Tulum. We went up to people on the streets and offered to do shoots for them. And we just worked towards becoming the kind of service we wanted to provide. My friend that I traveled with was a stylist and a hairstylist and makeup artist, and we were working together to create these images. By the end of the trip, we had met someone who needed some photos for one of the properties, got paid a little money to take these photos, and that actually paid for my flight. I wasn't expecting this, it was a bonus, but it was amazing. The second time we came back, we had already met people, so these people in advance help us plan and connect with other people on the island to potentially create shoots. And it was really amazing because by the second time I came back, one of my connections there had put me in touch with somebody who needed a photographer, and I already knew I was gonna make enough to cover my expenses and go on this trip. I stayed a little extra, managed to make a little bit more money, and that second trip actually was profitable. Before I left that second trip, one of my friends was getting married in a few months down the line, and she said to me, I want to hire you as my photographer. So I planned my next trip back 3 months later to actually shoot this wedding, and I was being paid my full rate. When I came back for that shoot, I had that schedule. I ended up booking a commercial client on one of the islands, and the cherry on top was I kept looking for opportunities, and I came across a retreat company and offered to shoot for them as a trade. This seemed like an opportunity to connect with like-minded people and to get myself more behind the camera in situations I wanted to be in. And here's where the story gets good. Because I did that, I ended up connecting with a client that became a client for years. The retreats and I traveled the world together, and I got to not only shoot around the world with them, but become one of their instructors and actually come back to Bali to teach, which is what ended up making me fall in love with the island and deciding to move here years later. So I guess the moral of the story, guys, is don't expect the world to hand you over the opportunities. You have to go out there and find it yourself. And there isn't just one way to be a traveling photographer. It's a little bit of hustle, it's a little bit of thinking, it's a little bit of planning, and it's a little bit of hoping and trying and being open to new opportunities, because if you're there, they will come. I hope this video was helpful to give you an idea what it's like to become a traveling photographer. I hope you get a better grasp of what the real expectations are, so you're not going into this feeling like a complete failure if you're not managing to make as much money as you're making at home, or if you're not managing to even get paid gigs yet. It takes time, it takes work, and it really is a hustle of mixing and matching things together to make ends meet. Now, I'm not saying this is the only way to do it. This is the way that it worked for me, and here I am years later continuing to travel in the world and take photos. So hope my advice and my stories were helpful. As always, if you have any questions, you can just hit me up on the comment section and we can chat. See you soon.